Welcome to Galactic Real Talk, where galactic wisdom meets real business. I'm your host, Bianca, and today we're going to be talking about what it looks like to be multidimensional here now. So, I feel really inspired to speak about this topic because it is so important to me on a personal level. I feel it, and I'm shown it very clearly by my guides that this is really important for where we are now, but it's also really important that I share it. Because I suppose to some extent, when you wake up to your spiritual path, your awakening, your multidimensional self in some respects, it can feel really confusing and it can feel like, right, so am I supposed to stop everything I'm doing when I wake up to my multidimensional self? I realize, well, I'm part of something bigger that actually, and I have this resonance with this idea that when I woke up, some of what was going on in my life felt a little bit shallow, a little bit false, fake, like not real. And actually, it felt so much deeper to be connected and spending time in higher realms and with people who really got that. And it's a beautiful thing. And I'm not saying it isn't. In fact, it's really important. It's so important. It was so important for me to find those people that could help ground me in that awakening when that first happened. And so, for anyone who's new listening here, I am a Galactic channel and I also run a marketing agency. So, as you might imagine, when I woke up to my galactic gifts, trying to integrate that into what I'm doing in my marketing business felt really strange, wild, not quite right. But it's been really shown to me over the past, I would say at least 12 months, maybe more, that that is important. And whilst there's no rules in this lifetime, and I don't believe, I believe I'm guided as opposed to, there's no perfect outcome. But what I've been really shown is however I choose to embody that, and that's a choice for all of us. The importance is to embody the multidimensional self here now. It's so important to bring those gifts and ground them into this reality. It's so important, and they show it to me like a strike of light hitting the ground to bring that multidimensional self, all of the incredible gifts that each one of us have. There's no one of us that is separate from this. Here now, learn to be of this in this world, but not of it. That's their words. Be in this world, but not of it. Because we are, and many people are speaking about this, and this was guidance I was getting over 2 years ago now, is that we are in a moment, we're in a time of great awakening on a mass scale. And we are learning to operate at higher dimensions than we've ever done before. We are able to access a higher range of I guess a higher frequency here on this planet at this time, but it's for us to choose to elevate. The door is open, we've got to walk through. So and there's a discussion, and I see that online. There's a lot of discussion about moving to a new earth, and I do think that is 100% what we're experiencing. But my guides have been very clear with me that this is for us to create. Like, we are creating that new version. We are the ones building the new ways of being, and it's through our access to, through the self, ultimately is what they share it as. It's through the self, because when we can operate on a individual level at a higher frequency, we can embody our gifts more deeply. We can embody that connection to higher realms more deeply here now. That's how we generate the change, because our actions start to be taken from a higher place, higher as in higher frequency, not necessarily, there's no right or wrong here. But if we can embody the higher dimensional aspects of ourselves here now, we can start to operate at an elevated frequency. And that's how we start to operate from dimensions that are beyond the 3D. So, what do I want to say about this? it can seem like a really easy thing to say, but a challenging thing to do, especially when you are not always met with others who are on the same wavelength, if you get me. So, and what I consistently get guidance around is that the real skill, the real embodiment is when you can allow yourself to be all of you, no matter where you are, no matter what you're met with, no matter who you're met with, because you are so confident and held in who you are and what you're here to share. And you're so clear on your own, you're so deeply connected to your own energy that you can be met with other energies and it shouldn't shake you fully. Now, we're all human and we're all learning. And I can tell you, I have days where I do not hit it. And then other days where I know I am, operating from a higher frequency. And I feel, and I don't know if anyone else can resonate with this, like I feel that at the moment, particularly the second half of this year, I felt like I can reach even higher heights than I've ever done before in my physical reality, in my current reality. It feels like I'm living in a higher dimension some days, but then some days it doesn't. And there was a part of me judging that. And I was very firmly guided to the fact that we are learning. And this is not a one and done process. This is a journey. It's an evolution. And that we are all having to learn that for ourselves. And I think it's really important as well, because when I look out at the world and I see certain things that are going on, both in the spiritual space and beyond, that we don't give our power away to other people who are telling us or saying that it's possible for them to change or create our realities for us. Because quite frankly, that is not the way it works. And I know this with certainty because I have been shown it. The way to access the higher dimensions is through your own embodiment. And you can have support with that. And it's great to seek out those people that can help you to elevate your frequency, to help you to see where the shadows are, that can help you to see where you're repeating patterns, because we can't always see it for ourselves, but the work is for us to do. No one can take that away from you. I'm sorry to say, but that's the truth. So yeah, that's what we need to remember. And it's really amazing when we open up to all of this world that is available to us. So much more easy now, I feel, than even a few years ago. And maybe that is my own experience, but what I'm also being shown is that more of us are waking up and having easier access, because the veil is ultimately thinning and the access to that is becoming easier. So if you're not currently already experiencing that, then just give it the time. Because the other point I want to make here, when I was reflecting on what I wanted to say today, is that the reason I've been able to open up in the way that I have, and the way in which I allow myself to operate as much as I can from this higher dimensional energy, is I give it space and time. I dedicate time to make sure that I am in the right frequency. My energy is almost my first priority beyond anything else, beyond my to-do list, quite frankly. And that's a new way of being, because when we are stuck in 3D cycles, when we are stuck in the churn of life, we can say that to spend time to connect with ourselves, to connect with our guides, to connect with source, to be at one with that and to feel that frequency and to be guided from that place, there's too much to do. Well, if you're stuck in that place of do, you're not going to get there, because you need to dedicate time and space to the connection. The connection not only with source, but to yourself, to your soul. Because as we move into higher dimensions, what I'm being shown is we are operating less from the mind and more from the soul, less from the head and more from the heart. Now, actually, that should come relatively easy to us, because that is how we are designed to operate. That is ultimately our birthright. But the world around us has conditioned us out of that way of being. And it's taught us to be so deeply in the mind that that feels difficult. When I first opened up on my journey, I found it very difficult to sit in silence for even 2 minutes. And that's wild, because I do that regularly for very long periods of time. So sometimes now, so much that I lose track of time. And that's a beautiful thing. And I'm a mum of 2 young kids. I've got a 2-year-old and a 6-year-old. So if I can create space, you can create space. Each one of us can create the space to tune into ourselves. If you want to tune into your guides, if you want to tune into beings that are, also available, you can for guidance. That's totally within your gift. But if nothing else, just tuning into yourself on a deep level, tuning into your soul. That's where you get the higher guidance. That's where you start to operate from. Who am I being? Who am I truly? What is really for me? And you can discern between the things that are taking you potentially backwards or not allowing you to elevate to where you really want to go, because you can see the difference of when something is playing out in terms of a pattern, or when you're making decisions based on external factors rather than what it is you truly want in your life and how you want that to look. So this is the first point I want to make around multi-dimensional self here now, is learning to discern between when you're being led by your heart and your head, when you're being led by your soul's guidance. And the best way, and I was going to say the only way, and I feel like that's probably true as well, is to learn to come back to yourself and give it space. And you're responsible for that. I'm responsible for that. Each one of us is responsible for that. Creating the space to tune in. Because there's always something else to do. There's always stuff to do. But what my own experience has been is, once I learned to do that, and once I started to give more space to tuning in and spending time, connecting, that meant I worried less about the stuff as well. So it was like, it's like a freeing process, because you're spending the time to sit. You start to be able to understand, where are you just putting pressure on yourself for pressure's sake? Like, where is the urgency coming from? Is it really true urgency, or is it urgency you've just created? And I'm sure that my husband would give you great examples of where that's played out for me. Particularly, I can think about, I used to, in my previous way of being, perhaps before I understood more about what's available, I would be so obsessed with making sure everything was perfect all the time. The house had to be perfect. Like, I used to see my house as a full reflection of myself. Now, what I'm not saying is I let the house go completely crazy. I do like the house to look nice, and I like things to be, it feels good when you're not around clutter. But I no longer make that a reflection on me. So I would, in previous scenarios before, understanding what I understand now, I would prioritize that over creating space for myself to tune in, or creating space for myself to rest and restore and rejuvenate. And I would I would have to fill almost any empty space with doing. What I learned over time is a lot of that was me avoiding my own thoughts. Back when I needed to make some different choices, because my soul was deeply calling me somewhere else, and I wasn't really always listening, because I was always filling it up with other things. So I'd be interested to know if that at all resonates, or if anyone else has had that experience in their own journey, of letting go, of understanding actually what's the important stuff here, and what's the priority. And the priority is always my frequency, my energy. And you might feel, and I feel like what's coming through me now is to say, like, maybe somebody here is thinking, well, that can be quite a selfish way of being. Well, actually, no, because as a mum, my experience has been, where I make sure that I give myself the time, that I have the clarity, that I have the space, I am a better, more present mum too. So that has an incremental knock-on effect to everybody. Now, whether you're a mum or not, or a dad, or whether you've got dependents in any way, it doesn't matter, because you can still be more present with life, present with friends, present with partners, more guided by the synchronicity of life. And you can see these things popping up because you're not constantly running. You're not constantly on this treadmill. You're stepping back, and you can hear the guidance. You can notice the signs. You can see the synchronicities for what they are, rather than just calling them coincidences and then disregarding them, because the universe is always communicating. And we just have to tune in and start to learn that that's how we're supposed to operate. This is how we are guided through life. And when we start that process, it's quite a miracle in the way that it will unfold. But it doesn't matter how long you've been on this journey and how open you are. You still have days where you forget or things happen and it feels, challenging. So I'm not saying you can be perfect with that. I'm not saying if you have a difficult day, then you've undone years of work. That's not the truth. That's really not the truth. But it's just dedicating that time, and that needs to be a priority. And if we slip, we slip, and it's always good to come back and remember. So that was the first thing I wanted to say. It was around creating space. The second thing is connecting with my guides. So how do we, in the question of how do we access multidimensional ways of being here now? Connecting with my guides has been the most incredible experience. And because when I first opened up, my connection with my guides didn't necessarily look like it looks today, and it's constantly evolving. I'm constantly getting new connections, new beings stepping forwards and supporting me, new connections in spirit with ancestors and loved ones. Like, it opens up. I never know what's coming next. And I'm sure all of you can resonate with that. And so then it's sort of connected to the previous point. The more I find it's like a muscle. The more you do it, the easier it gets. It may start in one way. And also it's important to let go of what other people are saying. Now, the experiences I'm speaking to you about here are mine. They won't necessarily be the same for you. I have very, very strong connections to my galactic guides. And so I find it very very, very easeful to go all the way up and spend time with high dimensional beings. That's just how it works for me. I used to get cross almost and frustrated that I would find it difficult to connect in that more, I would say like in a medium sort of realm with loved ones. Now it does happen, but it's not as easy for me to connect in that way as for other people. That's just the way it is, that's how my connection works. My gifts are very much in audio. So I bring through information, I hear it and I channel it and I can speak it through. I do get visions, but that's not my dominant gift. Other people might see incredible visions. Other people might be able to, be incredible healers and have their own modalities through energy work. Everybody's gifts are different, but until you start tapping in and receiving the guidance and the openness to receive that guidance, it's hard to change that, hard to hear it. So how do I bring that multidimensional self into, or that multidimensional connection, high dimensional connection into the work I do? When I feel like I need the guidance, I go in and I ask. And I've come to learn that they can be quite specific. Now, what I've understood is that when you get channeled guidance or guidance from high dimensional beings, light beings, then sometimes you need to interpret it in a human way. You need to interpret the guidance so that you can make sense of it here now, because sometimes it sounds quite lofty and quite like high wisdom. But that's because I've come to realize that for them, the small details aren't so, they don't see it's irrelevant. It's more about the wisdom and the guidance of the path. So tapping into that, either through your own abilities, and if you're not yet open to that, having that validation, working with somebody who can tap into that is phenomenal, because it can help you to understand where you're being guided, like what we've said before. Is my intuition on point here or not? I just need that deeper guidance. Or you can even ask to be shown a sign, use it in your day-to-day life. I use it all the time. Each day I try to tune in and ask, am I on path? Show me today. When I've got a really important meeting, for example, I had to go up to a retail client and present, and I had a big long journey to get there. And when I got there, I knew it was going to be quite an important opportunity for me to really shine. And in a situation like that, before I exit the house, I will tune in, I will ask my guides to step forwards with me and be with me closely that day, so I can feel them really deeply in my field. So as I go about my day, I actually can feel and know that they're with me. And I feel like I'm operating then on a higher dimension, because my experience feels elevated, because my connection, the communication is strong. I don't necessarily do that every day, because I find that's better to do that when it's needed. So, but you could. I mean, there's nothing saying that you couldn't. But I find like when I really, really want them to step in close, they'll come in close. And then I'll feel and see the synchronicities. I had this big meeting and I wasn't sure if it was going to really be the thing, like I was really looking for the thing was going to really transform the direction that I was going in my marketing business. And as I stepped into the building of the meeting, the big meeting that felt really important to me at that time, I saw the number 33 was on my pass, and everybody else had a totally different number. I was in the building number 33, and then I saw a bus go by, and the bus number was number 33. All at the same moment, I made that connection. And for me, that was like, okay, I'm in the right place, and I've come to learn how to connect with those symbols and signs and the numbers. They all work for me. Everybody's interpretation needs to be different because they need to be interpreted for you. So it's really deeply personal. I think that's really important. So just using that as you're going about your day, it doesn't need to be separate. You don't need to call your guides in only when you're sat in the bath. Now, I love to do that, but it can be, it is possible that you can work with your guides as you're in and about your day. Get them, ask them to show you, ask them to confirm it, when you need it, and they will always step through. And perhaps if you're not getting the confirmation that you're looking for, if things aren't flowing in the way that you expect, then I would spend the time and sit, because it might be that either it's percolating. So if you're anything like me, I often see the timeline and then wanna jump straight onto it. But sometimes I don't give enough time for the synchronicity to step forward so that I can match that timing. And that's been a big lesson for me, is learning the journey of kind of when to step in versus, when to allow it to percolate. That void period, which is necessary sometimes for the big transformation. So accepting when the stillness sits. And that's where your guides can be really helpful, because, for example, I've been in that process more recently and I've been very clearly shown that is the point. I'm supposed to be in a creative space. I'm supposed to be building it from the ground up. And so the action is different to the sort of action that I will take probably in 3 or 4 months' time, when that manifestation comes into my reality on a more physical level, and it starts to show itself in small pockets and in green shoots. So the signs and synchronicities are there. So it's understanding everybody operating at their own space, pace and timing. Divine timing is definitely created by you, but it's also I say it's like a relationship. You need to let go of the control. Like, that's been my biggest lesson in my life, is to try to force things to happen rather than allow them to build within me, to create that portal for what I want to bring into the world to arrive, and then to step out the way to allow it to come forwards. So is that slightly off topic, but you understand what I mean? So it's understanding to work with your guides, the field, and then bringing that into your everyday life. And then the third thing I wanted to say is let go of 3D constructs. So the way to operate on a multidimensional level here now is to let go of 3D concepts. And I want to speak to this from a business angle, because this is really something I love to speak about, and I see it play out so often. I see it play out whereby we might understand our role in the universe. We might actually start to realize that we are part of a bigger, more expansive process. Like, we are collectively coming together to create something bigger, and understanding our abilities and connections are phenomenal. But then what happens is we still find ourselves in daily 3D churn, going round and round and round. And it happens in business, and I'll give you maybe one example of this. I love to speak to, for example, I own a marketing business, and we speak about, we help brands with digital and social media marketing. Where we're heading, you can let fully go of what you believe should happen and how you should be speaking on social media. Now, in the, I would say, old paradigm of marketing, it's been about tell someone that, your marketing needs to be tell someone that there's a problem, and then you're the solution. So, but what is happening there in that context is, if you feel into the frequency of that, because we are starting to operate from a place where frequency is more important than anything, because people, whether they understand it or not, will resonate with the frequency. Now, if you're here to speak to leaders and you're here to speak to individuals who are elevated in their experience, when you speak to them in a way that has an undertone of, for example, fear, if you don't do this, you will, which is what we're taught to say in marketing, that's fear-based. There's an undertone there of lower vibration. They're going to feel that. So sometimes what I see is, out there's still this viewpoint. If you follow someone's 5-step formula to create in your business, it will work. It will not in the future as we go. It might work for some people now, but if you're here on this channel talking to me and you're interested in how to elevate your experience beyond the 3D, then it is likely that's not going to resonate for you. And so what I see is people feeling stuck in following other people's models and then not knowing why things are not unfolding. What I've been shown so clearly is, as we move forwards, we have to let go of 3D constructs and let go of operating purely from logic. Now, I'm not saying there's no role for logic, there is, but it's not operating from pure logic. Operating from your frequency being your highest, your frequency being the most important part of what you are doing, understanding what you're emitting, what you're putting out into the field, and then from there you call people in. So if what you're doing from a business standpoint, your marketing or your sales or whatever it might be, doesn't resonate with who you are, it can't be felt. If it can't be felt, you're not operating at your true frequency. You're not operating at the you're not emitting what you need to be able to magnetize what you really want into your experience. So when you're following somebody else's approach and it feels misaligned, then the energy of that's going to be off. And it's going to be felt, not only by you, but everybody else as well. So this is a really, really great example, because what is the solution? Come back to you. How do you want to put yourself out in the world? What feels really good? Now, I love making videos. Not everybody does. That's my personal approach. And if you can find ways to put yourself out there in the world that feel really natural and freeing, it doesn't feel like an effort, you're onto something, because it will be enjoyed more by you and enjoyed by those that experience that content or whatever it is you're putting out into the world. And so the resonance is higher. When there is a should, the word should is involved, then question it. Question it, because where we're heading, you don't need shoulds. Shoulds can go firmly in the bin, because it should be based on excitement. It needs to be, I've said the word as well, which is funny, but as we move forwards, it's about following the excitement, following the joy, and expressing what we're here to express, and sometimes without expectation. And that's how we really find ourselves on par. So let go of 3D constructs, let go of logic, let go of other people trying to tell you that their way is going to work better than yours, and focus on finding, if you don't already know what it is, your way of being. That is, whether you've got a business or not, the way forward. If you are doing something because you think you should, because somebody else did it that way, because you think A needs to get you to B, let go of it. Focus where you want to be and allow the inspiration to take you there. So that was my final point. No, actually, I did have one other final point, which is, don't be afraid to be different. Because if you're operating from this experience, from understanding your multidimensional self, and you are you are using these modalities, if you're sat on the train and you are bringing forward your guides, and that's your way of being, don't worry about what others are thinking about that. Don't worry if, and maybe if you're around people that don't understand, just maybe don't worry if their perspective is different to yours or people think it's weird. It's actually really important to be different. It's really important to be you. Being different for the sake of being different isn't the point, but being you is so more important right now than anything else. And it might sometimes feel like you're out on your own, but trust me, you're not. I'm here doing this stuff, And there are so many people out there who are willing to let go of all of the societal constructs that we've been, conditioned with. And we are eventually getting to a point where we shed enough layers to really, truly be ourselves. And that's a journey for all of us, including me. But don't be afraid to be yourself. Don't be afraid if that self is different. Embrace it. So that's what I'm going to leave you with. Thanks so much for being here. And I look forward to seeing you on the next episode.